Recently, there's a book that came out by Pope Francis about his life. And the title of the book is Life, My Story Through History. And basically, it starts in the 1930s and the Great Depression, and all that the Pope, as he lives a life of community in the church and as Jesuits, in a sense, all the storms of human history that he passes through, from the Depression to the Cold War to the dictatorship in Argentina to recent things of becoming made Pope and the pandemic of COVID, and on to what we see now with war, and the presence of that spirit. The spirit that allows a person of faith, a community, to face the storms of life. And I bring it up because it's an image that we get of the upper room of Jesus and his resurrection appearance to these disciples. That they're locked in this room and they're afraid. They're afraid to face the storms of human history outside. And it's when the Spirit that was breathed on creation, but that Spirit of the risen Lord breathes on them and empowers them to go out and sin. And really, it's the church as it whispers through the ages, that over the centuries of how it moves out in human history with that new life to face the tornadoes or storms of our lives, of human history. And I think of these fellas, the journey is just starting out for them. I had an opportunity while I was this past week to visit a religious sister that I'm very close with, Sister Joni. She's 79, and there are a number of sisters that live in this really Mount St. Joseph that are retired. Well, while I was there was a tornado watch. So they gathered like 20 religious sisters in the basement, and I'm there with them. And I can't help but wonder, as I'm looking at them, I'm looking at a life of grace, of how many the Spirit of God had touched through them. And I kind of imagine the disciples, if they lived long enough after that upper room experience, how different and what they would ponder of the storms that they faced. And I couldn't help but, even in my own life, think of the religious sisters from my upbringing, their influence on my family and my education, and just everywhere on that journey. And who is it in our lives who's passed that life of grace, that life of the Spirit onto us, in our family and in our journey? And we're called in this Easter season to renew that. Recently, I saw a great film. It's called The Tree of Life. And the director, Terrence Malick, he wrestles with this reality of kind of how we try to journey a journey of grace, and then our selfishness that can enter into the way. And he starts like billions of years ago with the beginning of creation and the Big Bang, and how this Spirit just moves throughout history, over creation. But in the film, he sort of wrestles with, a father, the two characters, these two young men, R.L. and Jack in it, and a father that is very strict and really raising them to, you gotta climb to the top. How do you beat and defeat others? How do you, in a sense, be successful? And then his mother, who really lived a life of grace, of curiosity, of generosity, of selflessness. And he's looking back, this character, Jack, over his life, especially later his brother's death. And he sees through the whispers of his mother and his brother how God was always there, and how that grace was inviting him into a new life. And I think that's what we're invited into. You know, we all have doubts. We all have fears. We all have struggles. But what happened in the upper room is Jesus crossed the threshold of that, of suffering and death. And it's within that his Spirit breathes on them. And Thomas, he comes with his doubts, with his wrestling, and it's really right there that he encounters the risen Lord. And so this Easter is a season where we continue to breathe that new life of the Spirit, to be cleansed, to be recreated in it, and move forward. In Malick's film, The Tree of Life, he talks about the sisters and how this wrestling with grace, or what he likes to call nature, but really just the kind of in it for me side of ourselves. And he says, you know, this nature is always unhappy. It can't see the beauty when the world is shining around it. It is out for its own advantage. But he says, his mom in this image of God in the beginning says, there are two ways through life, the way of nature and the gray way of grace. And you have to choose which one you will follow. And those disciples in that upper room, those religious sisters, hear us at St. Agnes. The Easter season invites us to think of who taught us and to follow the way of grace.